Hey there, history buffs and curious minds. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving deep into the life and career of one of the most controversial figures in the 20th century, Joseph Stalin. But before we delve into the complexities of his rule, let's start at the beginning, shall we? Our story begins in a quaint little village nestled in the rugged terrain of the Georgian mountains. It's a place where the air is crisp and the landscapes are nothing short of breathtaking. This is where a young boy named Ioseb Jughashvili was born on December 18, 1878. Now, imagine this young boy with big dreams, born into a poor family. His early life was filled with struggles and hardships, but young Ioseb was determined to change his fate. Little did anyone know that this boy would go on to become one of the most powerful and feared leaders in the world. But every great story has its humble beginnings, right? As he grew older, Ioseb developed a passion for poetry and even attended a theological seminary to study for the priesthood. But life had different plans for him. He became involved in revolutionary activities and soon adopted the alias we all know him by today, Joseph Stalin. It was an era of political upheaval and change, and Stalin was right in the thick of it. He found himself in the midst of a tumultuous world, where ideologies clashed and destinies were forged. Joseph Stalin's rise to power in the Soviet Union can be summarized in several key steps. Stalin was an active member of the Bolshevik Party, led by Vladimir Lenin, during the Russian Revolution of 1917. He played a role in organizing the Red Guard, a paramilitary force that supported the Bolsheviks. Stalin held various leadership positions within the Bolshevik government and military, which helped him gain influence and power. He became the People's Commissar for Nationalities in 1917, and then the People's Commissar for State Control in 1918. Stalin was skilled in political maneuvering and used his positions to consolidate power. He built alliances with key figures, such as Leon Trotsky, and eliminated rivals. In 1924, after Lenin's death, a power struggle ensued within the party. Stalin successfully outmaneuvered and marginalized his main rival, Leon Trotsky, through political manipulation and by undermining Trotsky's authority. Trotsky was expelled from the party and later exiled from the Soviet Union. By the late 1920s, Stalin had effectively taken control of the Communist Party and its Politburo. He promoted the idea of socialism in one country, emphasizing the need for rapid industrialization and modernization in the Soviet Union. Stalin's rule was characterized by a ruthless consolidation of power, including purges, mass executions, and the suppression of dissent. He established a totalitarian regime, which lasted until his death in 1953. Stalin's ascent to power was marked by political cunning, manipulation, and the elimination of rivals, allowing him to become the de facto leader of the Soviet Union for nearly 3 decades. Joseph Stalin's industrialization efforts in the Soviet Union during the early to mid-20th century were nothing short of monumental. Through a combination of planning, coercion, and sheer determination, Stalin transformed a largely agrarian society into an industrial powerhouse. Let's delve into this fascinating journey. Stalin's vision for industrialization stemmed from the desire to catch up with the Western world, which had already surged ahead with its industrial might. He recognized that the Soviet Union's predominantly agricultural economy wouldn't cut it in the modern era, and so began the process of rapid industrialization. One of his primary strategies was the implementation of 5-year plans. These were comprehensive roadmaps for the country's economic development. The first plan, initiated in 1928, focused on heavy industry, such as steel and coal production. The second plan shifted the emphasis to consumer goods, and so on. These plans served as a blueprint for the entire nation's efforts, coordinating production, labor, and resources on a massive scale. Stalin's government, though effective in implementing these ambitious plans, often resorted to force and coercion. Collectivization of agriculture was one such example. While intended to free up labor for industry, it led to mass famine and the suffering of millions. The government's heavy-handed approach was, unfortunately, a significant downside of this period. However, despite the harsh methods, it's undeniable that Stalin's industrialization drive achieved remarkable results. The Soviet Union went from being an agrarian society to an industrial giant within a few decades. The construction of colossal projects like the Moscow Metro, gigantic factories, and extensive infrastructure improvements exemplified the scale of transformation. Stalin's leadership also witnessed rapid urbanization. Cities expanded, and millions of people moved from the countryside to work in the new factories. The population shift was a testament to the allure of industrialization and the promise of a better life, despite the challenges. The Second World War further highlighted the success of Stalin's industrialization. The Soviet Union's production capabilities played a pivotal role in the eventual defeat of Nazi Germany. The country not only withstood the Nazi onslaught, but also pushed back, and its industrial capacity was a key factor. The Great Purge, also known as the Great Terror, unfolded in several waves between 1934 and 1940. Its primary objective was the elimination of perceived enemies of the state, including political opponents, intellectuals, religious figures, and anyone who posed a potential threat to Stalin's rule. The purges were carried out with ruthless efficiency, often through show trials, where confessions were extracted through coercion and torture. Prominent figures within the Communist Party, including high-ranking military officials, were among the victims. The scale of the purges was staggering, resulting in the imprisonment and execution of an estimated 700,000 to 1.5 million people. Simultaneously, the Soviet Union's vast network of forced labor camps, known as the Gulag, became an integral part of the state's repressive machinery. Millions of individuals were sent to the Gulag for perceived political crimes, as well as for trivial offenses or no reason at all. Conditions in these camps were deplorable, marked by forced labor, inadequate food, and inhumane treatment. The Gulag system grew to encompass a multitude of labor camps scattered across the vast Soviet landscape, with prisoners toiling in harsh conditions, often in remote and desolate areas. The total number of people who passed through the Gulag system during its existence is difficult to determine precisely, but estimates range from 18 to 30 million. The consequences of the Great Purge and the Gulag were devastating on multiple levels. Firstly, it resulted in the loss of countless lives and the suffering of millions of Soviet citizens and their families. Entire communities were torn apart as people disappeared into the clutches of the secret police. The purges also had a profound impact on the intellectual and cultural life of the Soviet Union, as many artists, writers, scientists, and scholars were silenced or eliminated. The climate of fear and suspicion stifled creativity and innovation. Furthermore, the Soviet Union's international reputation suffered as the atrocities of the Great Purge and the Gulag became known to the world. Reports of the brutalities and mass executions horrified observers, and the Soviet regime's credibility and moral authority were seriously undermined. The legacy of the Gulag and the Great Purge continues to cast a long shadow over Russia and the broader world. It remains a contentious and painful topic in contemporary Russian society, as efforts to fully acknowledge and come to terms with this dark chapter in history have been met with resistance and differing interpretations. In recent years, there has been some discussion and debate in Russia regarding the memory of the purges, with some advocating for a more honest and comprehensive historical reckoning. Stalin's signing of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact in 1939 with Nazi Germany ensured Soviet territorial gains, but also allowed Germany to focus on its Western Front, ultimately leading to the invasion of Poland and the start of World War II. In 1939 to 1940, the Soviet Union occupied and annexed territories in Eastern Europe. This expansion set the stage for future conflicts and greatly affected the post-war landscape. Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941, took Stalin and the Soviet leadership by surprise. Despite early setbacks, Stalin's determination and strategic decisions, such as the scorched earth policy, helped stall the German advance. Stalin's leadership style and propaganda played a crucial role in rallying the Soviet people and maintaining morale during the darkest days of the war. Stalin's negotiations with the Western Allies, particularly his meetings with Churchill and Roosevelt, shaped the post-war world and solidified the Allied partnership. The Eastern Front was the largest and bloodiest theater of World War II, and Stalin's leadership contributed significantly to the Soviet victory, culminating in the capture of Berlin in 1945. Stalin's death in 1953 marked a pivotal moment in Soviet and world history. Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union for nearly 3 decades, had wielded immense power and authority, shaping the course of the nation and its relations with the world. His passing had significant repercussions on both the USSR and global geopolitics. Stalin's death on March 5, 1953, left a void in Soviet leadership. His rule was characterized by totalitarian control, purges, and extensive state planning. The circumstances surrounding his death remained somewhat mysterious, as official accounts were kept vague, leading to various theories and speculations. However, it is widely believed that he died of a stroke. The secrecy surrounding his illness and the abrupt announcement of his death contributed to a sense of uncertainty and fear among Soviet citizens. In the immediate aftermath of Stalin's death, a power struggle ensued within the Soviet leadership. A collective leadership, with figures like Georgy Malenkov, Nikita Khrushchev, Vyacheslav Molotov, and Lavrentiy Beria, emerged. This period saw significant policy shifts, including a partial thaw in the oppressive atmosphere of Stalin's era. Khrushchev, eventually emerging as the dominant figure, delivered his famous secret speech in 1956, denouncing some of Stalin's excesses, which was a significant departure from the previous regime's policies. Stalin's death had implications for the broader international stage as well. The world had been deeply divided during the Cold War, and Stalin's aggressive policies had contributed to this division. His death brought hope for a possible easing of tensions. While the Cold War continued, the subsequent leaders of the Soviet Union, particularly Khrushchev, pursued a less confrontational approach, such as the 1955 Geneva Summit and the Spirit of Camp David in 1959 with the United States. These events marked efforts to reduce the risk of nuclear war and promote détente. Stalin's death also had implications for the Eastern Bloc countries under Soviet influence. It marked a period of uncertainty as some of these nations began to assert their independence and challenge Soviet control. The Hungarian Uprising in 1956 and the Prague Spring in 1968 were examples of such movements that sought more autonomy from Moscow.